What would you think if during your daughter-in-law's funeral, her husband arrived with another woman by his side? I was seated near the front of the church, unable to look away from the polished coffin holding a woman whose death still made no sense. Then the doors creaked open. My son walked in steady, unemotional, his hand tightly linked with the woman he had been secretly seeing. A wave of shock swept through the room, but no one there realized I had anticipated this moment. And when the screen lit up and the footage started, the silence shattered. In seconds, everything he tried to hide was exposed, and nothing would ever be the same again. I truly appreciate you being here and listening along. Before we move forward, take a moment to tell me, where are you tuning in from today? Share your city or country in the comments. It's always powerful to see how far these stories reach. One quick note before we continue. Parts of this story have been creatively adapted to support reflection and learning. Any similarities to real individuals or locations are coincidental, but the core message is shared with care and intention. Charles Patterson is what they call me, and 66 years have shaped every line on my face. 4 decades of my life went into constructing one of the East Coast's most trusted regional banking institutions. I've sat across from senators in rooms that smelled of old leather and expensive cigars, negotiated deals that could make or break entire companies, and signed documents that transformed dreams into reality or crushed them into dust. Yet none of that experience, none of those carefully honed instincts, could have prepared me for the storm that was about to tear through my life. My days now unfold in solitude within a 4-bedroom colonial that's far too spacious for one aging man. The house stands on Elderwood Avenue in that part of town, where wealth whispers rather than shouts, where landscape crews arrive like clockwork every Thursday, where silence settles over the streets after 9 p.m. like an unspoken agreement among neighbors. Ancient oak trees line the avenue, their branches forming cathedral arches overhead, silent witnesses to generations of joy and heartbreak. This house holds too many memories for me to abandon it, though logic suggests I should. Eleanor chose this place. We walked through it together 36 years ago, her eyes lighting up at the bay windows, her fingers trailing along the crown, molding her voice, already planning which room would be the nursery. She left me a decade ago, a stroke that stole her while she slept. I found her in the morning, already cold, already gone. No final words. No chance to say everything I should have said years before. Now I drift through these rooms like a ghost haunting his own life. My footsteps create hollow echoes on floors that once rang with laughter and arguments and the everyday sounds of a family living. Eleanor's reading chair remains exactly where she left it, positioned perfectly by the bay window to catch afternoon light. I've never moved it. Some evenings, when the loneliness becomes too heavy, I pour 2 fingers of bourbon and settle into the chair opposite hers. I pretend she's still there, her reading glasses perched on her nose, telling me about the mystery novel that's keeping her up late, or describing her ambitious plans for next spring's garden. But Eleanor isn't why I'm telling you this story, though. God knows I think about her every single day. I'm here because of my son, because of what he did, because of what I had to do in response. Justin Patterson, 38 years old. My only child, my only legacy, the little boy who once begged me for bedtime stories about brave pirates discovering buried treasure. That innocent child vanished somewhere along the timeline of his growing up. I can't pinpoint the exact moment of transformation. Perhaps there wasn't one. Perhaps it happened gradually, imperceptibly, like watching colors fade from a photograph left too long in sunlight. The lying started early. Justin was 7 when I first caught him in a deliberate falsehood, something trivial about whether he'd brushed his teeth. Then came lies about completed homework, about where he'd been after school, about money missing from Eleanor's wallet. The lies grew larger, bolder, more elaborate. By high school, Justin was forging my signature with disturbing accuracy and helping himself to cash from Eleanor's purse as if it were his right. We exhausted every option trying to reach him. Family therapy sessions where Justin smiled and nodded and changed nothing. Consequences that seemed to roll off him like water off glass. Patience that stretched until it snapped. Love offered freely that he accepted without reciprocation. Nothing penetrated. He would look us directly in the eye and deliver lies with the casual confidence most people reserve for stating their own name. His college years were a catastrophe. 3 different universities, 3 dismissals. Not because Justin lacked intelligence, his mind was sharp, almost frighteningly so. He simply couldn't be bothered to attend classes or turn in assignments. Tuition money that should have funded his education instead bankrolled poker games and expensive dinners with friends who evaporated the moment his wallet ran dry. I rescued him financially more times than I care to count. Eleanor pleaded with me to stop, warned me I was enabling his worst instincts. She saw clearly what I refused to acknowledge. After Eleanor's death, Justin became even more distant. He'd surface every few months with phone calls that always followed the same pattern: flattery, nostalgia, then the real reason for the call. Some new business venture that just needed a small investment. Some opportunity of a lifetime that required immediate capital. I finally learned to refuse him. That simple word no became the most difficult vocabulary I ever had to master. The last time I gave in was 3 years ago. $20,000 for what he swore was a guaranteed return investment. The money vanished into whatever void swallows Justin's promises. I never mentioned it again, and neither did he. So when my phone lit up that Tuesday afternoon in July with Justin's name on the screen, every instinct told me to ignore it. I was sitting in my study, the same room where I'd made million-dollar decisions, where I'd reviewed loan applications that would change people's lives, sorting through old financial documents that didn't actually need sorting. The air conditioner maintained its steady hum. Outside, someone's automatic sprinkler system activated with its familiar mechanical click and wheeze. Against my better judgment, I answered on the 4th ring. Dad. Justin's voice came through clear and surprisingly steady, without the usual undertones of desperation or manipulation. I need to tell you something important. Really important. Here we go again? I thought, settling back into the leather chair that had cradled me through countless difficult conversations. I prepared myself mentally for whatever scheme he was about to pitch. I'm listening, I said, keeping my tone neutral. What came next caught me completely off guard. I got married, Justin said. 6 months ago. Her name is Madison. She works as a lawyer at a firm downtown. Dad, there's more. She's pregnant. We're expecting a daughter. We've already chosen her name, Lily. My spine straightened involuntarily. This wasn't the conversation I'd anticipated. Married. I repeated, struggling to process the information. Why am I only hearing about this now? Everything happened quickly. Justin explained, and I detected something unfamiliar in his voice, anxiety perhaps, or genuine remorse. But I'm calling now because I want to fix things between us. I want my daughter to know her grandfather. Madison is 7 months along, and Dad, I want to be better. I really want to be better this time. Those words, I want to be better, had echoed through our relationship like a broken record for decades. I'd heard them after every failure, every broken promise, every disappointment. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was the mention of a child, my grandchild, an innocent life that didn't yet exist. Or maybe I was simply an old man weary from years of anger and disappointment, desperate for something to hope for. What do you need, Justin? I asked, though my voice had softened without my permission. I want to come home, he said quietly. Madison and I are struggling financially. The pregnancy has been expensive and her law firm doesn't pay much yet. She needs proper rest before the baby arrives. I was hoping we could stay with you temporarily, just until we stabilize. I know I have no right to ask after everything, but I'm asking anyway. Not for me, for Lily, for Madison. Everything I'd learned over 38 years of watching Justin manipulate and disappoint screamed at me to refuse. But instead I found myself thinking about this house, about rooms that echoed with emptiness, about Eleanor's chair sitting vacant by the window, about a pregnant woman I'd never met who needed somewhere safe, about a granddaughter who would enter this world in just 8 weeks. "When would you arrive?" I heard myself ask. "Next week if you'll have us," Justin replied. "Madison really needs to be off her feet more, and our current apartment isn't suitable for her condition right now." I closed my eyes and made the decision that would unravel everything. "Yes," I said, "come home." After ending the call, I remained motionless in that chair for what felt like hours, watching afternoon light shift through the windows and paint moving shadows across Eleanor's empty chair. Something unfamiliar stirred in my chest, a tentative joy, a fragile hope that perhaps finally this time would be different. Perhaps fatherhood had transformed Justin. Perhaps I was about to welcome a daughter-in-law into this too-quiet house. Perhaps I would hold my granddaughter and watch her grow up loved and safe. I felt happy in that moment, genuinely cautiously happy. I had no way of knowing that this happiness would become the doorway to the greatest nightmare of my entire life. The moving truck pulled up to my house on a Saturday morning in late July. I watched from the front porch as Justin climbed out of the passenger side, then hurried around to help Madison from the car. She moved slowly, carefully, one hand supporting her swollen belly, the other gripping Justin's arm for balance. My daughter-in-law was heavily pregnant, 8 months along now, maybe more. I could see it in the way she walked, in the strain on her face as she made her way up the front path. She wore a loose summer dress that billowed around her in the warm breeze, and despite the exhaustion evident in every movement, she smiled when she saw me waiting. Mr. Patterson," she said softly as she reached the porch steps. Her voice was gentle, almost musical. "Thank you so much for opening your home to us. I know this is asking a lot. I'm Charles." I corrected, offering my hand to steady her on the steps. "Please call me Charles. And you're not asking anything, your family now." Up close, I could see the dark circles under her eyes, the pallor of her skin. She looked tired in a way that went beyond normal pregnancy exhaustion. But when she smiled, her whole face lit up, and I felt something shift in my chest, a protective instinct I hadn't felt in decades. Madison Wells was 33 years old, a lawyer at a small firm downtown that specialized in family law. She had an intelligent face with thoughtful eyes, and there was a quiet strength about her that reminded me painfully of someone I'd lost long ago. My daughter Sarah, who died of scarlet fever when she was just 4. Madison had that same gentle determination, that same soft-spoken grace. Over the next few days, as Madison settled into the guest room on the 2nd floor, I learned her story. She'd grown up in the foster care system, bouncing between homes until she aged out at 18. She'd put herself through college working as a waitress and a library assistant, then fought her way through law school on scholarships and student loans she was still paying off. "I don't have any family," she told me one afternoon. We were sitting in the kitchen. I was making chicken soup while she peeled carrots at the table, moving slowly, taking breaks to rest her hands on her belly. No parents, no siblings. The state couldn't find any relatives when I was a kid, or if they did, nobody wanted me. "You have family now," I said firmly. "You have me, and soon you'll have your daughter." Her eyes filled with tears. "That's kind of you to say." "I mean it," I told her. And I did. Looking at her sitting there pregnant and alone except for my troubled son, I felt a fierce desire to protect her, to be the father she'd never had. Those first 2 weeks were good in ways I hadn't anticipated. The house felt alive again. I'd wake up early and make breakfast: scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, fresh fruit. Madison would come down carefully holding the banister, and we'd eat together at the kitchen table while Justin slept late upstairs. She'd tell me about the cases she was working on: custody disputes, adoption proceedings. I'd tell her stories about my banking career, about Eleanor, about the garden Eleanor had loved. I taught Madison how to work the complicated thermostat that had been driving her crazy. I showed her where everything was kept: the good china, the emergency cash in the study, the spare keys. I helped her set up a proper budget, reviewed her student loan payments, gave her advice on negotiating with her law firm about maternity leave. We fell into a routine. I'd cook, she'd keep me company in the kitchen. I'd drive her to her prenatal appointments when Justin was out looking for work. We'd spend evenings in the living room, her in Eleanor's old chair by the window, me on the sofa, just talking about everything and nothing. "You're going to be a wonderful mother," I told her one evening. She'd been quiet, staring out at the garden where fireflies were beginning to appear in the dusk. "I hope so," she said softly. "I'm terrified I won't know how. I never had a mother to teach me." "You'll figure it out," I assured her. "And I'll be here to help. Your daughter is going to be very lucky. Lily," Madison said, touching her belly gently. "We're naming her Lily, after Justin's grandmother and Eleanor's mother," I said, feeling emotion catch in my throat. She would have been honored. But as the days passed, I began to notice things that worried me. Madison wasn't just tired from pregnancy, she was getting weaker. She'd have to stop halfway up the stairs to catch her breath. She barely ate, pushing food around her plate and apologizing, saying everything tasted strange. Sometimes she'd grip the edge of the counter, suddenly her face going pale, and I'd see her fighting not to get sick. "It's just morning sickness," she'd say. "Though it's lasting all day now. The doctor says it's normal for some women." But it didn't seem normal to me. I'd seen Eleanor pregnant with Justin, and while she'd been tired and occasionally nauseous, she'd never looked like this, like she was fading away day by day. Madison began sleeping more sometimes, 12 or 14 hours a night. She'd apologize for being lazy, but I could see in her eyes that she couldn't help it. Her skin took on a grayish tint. Her hands trembled when she tried to hold a cup of tea. "Maybe you should see a different doctor," I suggested one morning after she'd barely touched her breakfast. "I have an appointment next week," she said. "I'm sure it's fine. First pregnancies are hard, that's all." Justin, meanwhile, had become a ghost in his own house. He'd leave early every morning, claiming job interviews or networking meetings. He'd come home late, go straight to the downstairs office, and lock himself in for hours. I'd hear him on the phone, his voice low and tense, but I could never make out the words. When he was around Madison, he seemed distant, distracted. He'd ask her how she was feeling in the same tone someone might ask about the weather. When she'd tell him about feeling sick, he'd nod and say, "That's normal for pregnancy," and change the subject. One night, I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs for water and saw light under the office door. I heard Justin's voice, sharp and urgent. "I told you I need more time." "No, she doesn't suspect anything. It's working exactly like you said it would." "Yes, I'll have the money by then, I promise." I stood there in the dark hallway, my heart pounding. Who was he talking to? What was working? What money? The next morning, I found Madison in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, tears streaming down her face. "Madison," I crossed to her quickly. "What's wrong? Is it the baby?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Charles, I feel so weak. Something doesn't feel right. But Justin keeps saying it's normal, that I'm just being paranoid because it's my first baby." She looked up at me with frightened eyes. "Am I being paranoid?" I put my hand on her shoulder. "No," I said quietly. "You're not." That was when I knew something was very, very wrong. I just didn't know yet how wrong or how dark the truth really was. I didn't know then that these signs would lead me to a terrible truth, one that would force me to make choices I never imagined I'd have to make. By the second week of August, I started noticing things I should have paid attention to earlier. Small details that didn't add up. Patterns that formed a picture I didn't want to see. Madison was now in her 9th month, her due date just 2 weeks away. She should have been uncomfortable but glowing, tired but excited. Instead, she was deteriorating. Each morning when she came downstairs, moving slower each day, gripping the railing with white knuckles, she looked grayer, more exhausted, more like a shadow of herself. I found her in the bathroom one Tuesday morning, sitting on the floor with her back against the bathtub, unable to get up. She was crying softly, one hand on her swollen belly. "I'm sorry," she whispered when she saw me in the doorway. "I got dizzy. Everything started spinning and I couldn't stand anymore." I helped her to her feet, steadied her as she swayed. "We need to call your doctor. Justin says it's normal," she said quietly. "He says it's just the stress of late pregnancy, that my body is exhausted from carrying the baby, that I need to rest more." "What do you think?" I asked, looking into her eyes. She hesitated, then said in a voice barely above a whisper, "I think something is very wrong." That afternoon, I started watching more carefully. Not just watching Madison, watching Justin. I noticed how he'd appear in the kitchen every morning with a glass of water and Madison's prenatal vitamins. "Don't forget these," he'd say, placing 2 pills in her hand, one large, one small. "Doctor's orders." But one morning, I saw him in their bedroom before Madison woke up. The door was cracked open, and through the gap, I watched him open a small wooden box on the dresser. Inside were 2 types of pills. He took one from each bottle, dropped them in his palm, then closed the box quickly and slipped it into his pocket. Why would he keep her vitamins in a box in his pocket instead of leaving them in the bathroom cabinet where medications belonged? I began paying attention to the pills themselves. The prenatal vitamin was large and oval, a standard drugstore brand. But the other pill, the small white one, was perfectly round, unmarked, different from anything I'd seen Madison take before they moved in. On Wednesday, I found myself alone in their bedroom, while Justin was out and Madison was napping downstairs. I shouldn't have looked. I knew it was wrong. But something in my gut, the same instinct that had helped me spot fraudulent loan applications and dishonest business partners during my banking career, told me I needed to know. The wooden box was in Justin's nightstand drawer, hidden under a stack of papers. Inside were 2 prescription bottles. One was Madison's prenatal vitamins, labeled clearly with her name and her doctor's information. The other bottle was unmarked, just a plain amber container with no label at all, filled with small white pills. I took a photo of the pills with my phone, my hands shaking slightly. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. That evening, I heard Justin in the downstairs office again. The door was locked, but his voice carried through the old wood. I stood in the hallway, barely breathing, and listened. "I told you it's working," he said, his voice low and urgent. "She's getting weaker every day. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She thinks it's just the pregnancy. The policy is worth $2.8 million. That's more than enough to cover everything I owe you, and then some. Yes, I'll have it within a month, I promise." My blood ran cold. Policy $2.8 million. The next morning, I saw papers on Justin's desk when he left the room to take a phone call. I shouldn't have looked at those either, but I did. They were life insurance documents, a policy on Madison's life dated 6 months ago, shortly after they'd gotten married. Justin was listed as the primary beneficiary, $2,800,000. I stood there staring at those papers, my mind racing through possibilities, trying to find an innocent explanation. People took out life insurance policies all the time. It was responsible, especially with a baby coming. There could be a perfectly reasonable explanation, but there wasn't. I knew there wasn't. On Friday afternoon, a woman came to the house. I was in the garden deadheading Eleanor's roses when I heard an unfamiliar car pull into the driveway. She was young, maybe 30, with platinum blonde hair and expensive clothes. Designer sunglasses, stiletto heels that seemed impractical for a casual visit. Justin met her at the door before she could knock. I watched through the rose bushes as they stood on the porch, speaking in low voices. Then she reached out and took his hand. Not a friendly handshake, she held it. her fingers intertwining with his, her other hand touching his arm in a way that was unmistakably intimate. They went inside into the office. The door closed. I waited 5 minutes, then walked into the house as quietly as I could. Through the office door, I could hear their voices. "How much longer?" the woman asked. "Soon," Justin replied. "The doctor said any day now. Once the baby is born, her body will be even weaker. It won't take long after that. And you're sure no one will suspect postpartum complications?" Justin said. "It happens all the time. Tragic, but natural." My hands clenched into fists. I walked away before I did something I'd regret. That evening, after the woman had left, after Justin introduced her to Madison as just an old friend from college, Alexis Sterling, I sat in my study with a glass of bourbon I didn't drink and forced myself to connect the pieces. The unmarked pills, Madison's deteriorating health, the life insurance policy, the mysterious woman, Justin's phone conversations about money and deadlines, his comment about postpartum complications. I'd spent 40 years reading people, spotting deception, recognizing the signs of fraud and malice. I'd trained myself to see patterns, to trust my instincts when something didn't add up. And every instinct I had was screaming the same terrible truth. My son was poisoning his pregnant wife, slowly, carefully making it look like pregnancy complications, planning to let her die after the baby was born so he could collect the insurance money and pay off whatever debts he'd accumulated with whatever criminal enterprise was threatening him. Madison was going to die, unless I stopped it. I started connecting the dots that perhaps only someone with my experience would recognize. The timing, the methodology, the cold calculation of it all. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was premeditated murder, planned and executed by someone who'd been lying his entire life. And the most horrifying part, he was going to let his own daughter be born just so he could make his wife's death seem more believable, more natural. I sat there in the dark, the bourbon untouched, and made a decision. I didn't know yet exactly what I was going to do, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty: I would not let my son kill Madison. I would not let my granddaughter grow up without a mother. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, I was going to stop him. I couldn't just stand by and watch. 40 years in banking had taught me that suspicion without evidence was worthless. If I was going to protect Madison, I needed proof. The next morning, while Justin was out and Madison was resting upstairs, I went back to their bedroom. The wooden box was still in Justin's nightstand. I took one of the small white pills, dropped it into a plastic sandwich bag, and replaced everything exactly. Then I called Brian Carter, an old friend from college who'd become a pharmacologist. We'd kept in touch over the years, Christmas cards, occasional lunches. He owed me a favor from when I'd helped his son get a banking internship. "Brian," I said when he picked up, "I need your help with something confidential." "Marles?" His voice was curious. "Of course. What do you need?" "I have a pill I need identified. No questions asked." There was a pause. "That's unusual. But yes, I can run it through the lab." "How soon?" "As soon as possible. It's urgent." We met that afternoon at a coffee shop. I handed him the bag discreetly. He examined the pill briefly, then slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Give me 2 days," he said. Those 2 days were agony. I watched Madison grow weaker, watched Justin play the concerned husband while poisoning her. I watched him give her those pills every morning, watched her swallow them trustingly. I wanted to knock the pills from his hand. But I needed proof first. Brian called Thursday evening. I was in my study, door locked, when my phone rang. "I'm Charles," he said gravely. "Where did you get this pill?" "What is it?" "Digoxin, a cardiac glycoside. In proper doses, it treats heart conditions. But this concentration..." He paused. "This isn't a prescription dose. This is dangerous. Regular use would cause weakness, nausea, dizziness, confusion. Eventually, heart failure. The room tilted. How long? It depends on dose and frequency. Daily for weeks, it could be fatal, and it would look like natural causes, especially in pregnancy. Symptoms would seem like pregnancy complications. Thank you, Brian. Charles, whoever has these pills needs to stop immediately. Call the police. I lied. I hung up shaking. My son was poisoning his wife. My son was a murderer. The next day, I bought a small voice recorder with same-day delivery. I learned to use my phone's voice memo app as backup. Then I started recording. I caught Justin on the phone in the office talking about money. I told you I'll have it soon. Yes, 1.8 million. I haven't forgotten what happens if I don't pay. I recorded him with Alexis that Saturday when Madison was sleeping. Thus after she's gone, we take the insurance money and disappear, Justin said. Costa Rica like we planned. Beautiful beaches, no extradition. We'll be set for life. What about the baby? Alexis asked. Adoption, maybe. I can't raise a kid alone. I left before I kicked down that door. That afternoon, while Justin showered, I checked his laptop. He hadn't logged out. His search history made me sick. How to make death look natural. Undetectable poisons. Life insurance payout timeline. Heart attack symptoms. Countries with no extradition to U.S. I took screenshots of everything. His emails to Alexis went back 6 months discussing the plan. She messages to someone named Eric Dawson about gambling debts $1.8 million owed to an illegal casino with threats about non-payment. The life insurance policy was saved on his desktop. Madison Wells Patterson. Beneficiary Justin Patterson. Amount $2,800,000. Effective date February 2023, 2 months after their marriage. The timeline crystallized. Justin had married Madison, gotten her pregnant, taken out massive life insurance, then started poisoning her slowly. He'd calculated everything, waiting until late pregnancy, when symptoms would seem normal, planning to kill her after birth, when death would be attributed to postpartum complications. He'd researched hospitals with high maternal mortality rates, doctors likely to sign death certificates without demanding autopsies. My son had planned murder with the cold precision I'd once used for business acquisitions. I compiled everything. Brian's pill analysis, the recordings, screenshots, insurance documents. I put it all in a laptop folder, backed it up to a thumb drive, and locked the drive in my safe. Then I sat with bourbon I couldn't drink and tried to figure out what to do. I could go to the police, show them everything. They'd arrest Justin. Madison would be safe. But Justin was my son, Eleanor's boy. Police meant prison for attempted murder. Our family name in newspapers. The shame. Destroying what remained of the family Eleanor and I had built. And Madison would know her husband tried to kill her. The father of her child was a monster. She'd have to testify, relive every betrayal. She was about to give birth. The stress could harm her and the baby. But if I didn't go to the police, Madison would die. I knew the truth now. I had evidence, but I didn't know what to do with it. I only knew one thing: I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't let Justin kill Madison and his daughter's mother. Whatever I decided, I had to decide soon. Madison's due date was in 5 days. Once the baby was born, Justin's timeline would accelerate. He'd increase the dose. Madison would worsen. Before anyone could figure it out, she'd be gone. 5 days to save my daughter-in-law's life. The clock was ticking. I waited until Justin left the house the next morning. He kissed Madison's forehead, murmured something about job interviews, and walked out like a devoted husband. The performance made my stomach turn. The moment his car disappeared down Elderwood Avenue, I went upstairs to the guest room. Madison sat by the window, one hand resting on her swollen belly. She looked exhausted, pale, fragile in a way that frightened me. When she saw me, she tried to smile. "Charles," she said softly, "good morning." "Madison," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "I need you to come downstairs with me." There's something important we need to talk about. Something in my tone must have reached her. Her eyes widened. Is it the baby? Did I do something wrong? No, sweetheart. Nothing like that. But it matters. Can you come down? She nodded and let me help her stand. We moved slowly down the stairs, her hand gripping the railing. I settled her into Eleanor's old chair by the bay window, added the ottoman so she could raise her feet, then sat across from her, hands clasped. Madison, I began, then stopped. How do you tell someone their husband is trying to kill them? Charles, she whispered. You're scaring me. I know, and I'm sorry. But you need to listen carefully. I know you're being poisoned. I know Justin is trying to kill you. All color drained from her face. She stared at me in silence, then began to shake. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You know, she gasped. You actually know. I knelt beside her and took her freezing hands. You suspected, I said gently. She nodded, breaking. I thought I was imagining things. Pregnancy hormones. But I feel like I'm dying. Every day I'm weaker. Justin keeps telling me it's normal, that I'm just stressed. She looked at me terrified. It's not normal, is it? No, it isn't. She wiped her face. 2 months ago, I got worse. The doctor said the tests were fine. Then I noticed Justin always gave me my vitamins, every morning. If I said I'd take them later, he got upset, insistent. Did you question him? Once. He got cold, said I was ungrateful, made me feel guilty. That's when I knew something was wrong. She sobbed, but I had no proof, and I was scared. Of what? Of him. Of losing Lily. He controls all the money. If I accused him, he'd take her. The courts would believe him. Her voice shook. I'm scared I'm running out of time. The baby's due soon. What if I die giving birth? What if Lily grows up thinking I abandoned her? Stop, I said firmly. You are not going to die. Lily will not lose her mother. But how? Because you're my daughter now. Lily is my granddaughter. I will protect you both with everything I have. She stared at me, stunned. Then hope flickered. I have proof, I said. The drug is digoxin. I had the pills tested. I have recordings of him planning this with his mistress. I have evidence of debts and insurance policies. Her hand flew to her mouth. Alexis. Yes. She closed her eyes. I knew it. He's been planning this for at least 6 months. She sobbed, collapsing forward. I held her until she could breathe again. Why, she whispered. Why would he do this? Money. He owes 1.8 million. Your policy is worth 2.8. He planned to run. Silence stretched between us. What do we do? She asked. I have a plan. It's complicated. You have to trust me completely. I do, she said instantly. I explained the outline. How we'd stop the poisoning. How we'd protect her legally. How Justin would lose any chance at custody. I spared her the darker details. When I finished, she was quiet. Grandpa, she asked softly, can I call you that? I'd be honored. If you do this, she said steadily, I trust you with my life. And my daughters. I hugged her carefully. Outside, a car engine sounded. Justin was coming home early. Act normal, I whispered. Take the pills, but don't swallow them. She nodded. We're going to save you, I said. Both of you. That evening, after Justin had gone to bed, and Madison was safely in her room, I made a phone call that would change everything. Thomas Webb answered on the second ring. Charles, it's almost 11. What's wrong? Tom, I need your help. Legal help. Come to my house tomorrow. This can't wait. Tom and I had known each other for 30 years since our college days at Yale. He'd handled Eleanor's estate when she died. He knew when I was serious. I'll be there at 9, he said simply. The next morning, Tom arrived carrying his leather briefcase, silver hair perfectly combed. I led him to my study and locked the door. Charles, what's going on? I handed him the thumb drive. Everything's on here, but let me explain first. For the next hour, I told him everything. The digoxin, the gambling debts, the life insurance, the recordings, the plan to kill Madison. Tom's face went from concerned to shocked to furious. "Oh, your son is planning to murder his pregnant wife," he said finally. "Yes, and you have proof. Every piece. Look at the drive." Tom reviewed everything: Brian Carter's pill analysis, the audio recordings, the screenshots, the insurance documents. When he finished, he sat back and removed his glasses. "This is airtight," he said. "We could go to the police right now." "That's not what I'm going to do." He looked at me sharply. "What do you mean?" Madison is due any day now. If we arrest Justin now, she'll labor knowing her husband tried to kill her, testify, while recovering, face months of trial. The stress could endanger her and the baby. I leaned forward. "I want Justin to face public exposure. I want everyone to see exactly what kind of monster he is." "What are you proposing?" I told him. It took another hour. More than once Tom stopped me to ask if I was serious, but by the end he was nodding. "It's audacious. The most complicated plan I've ever heard. But Charles, it might actually work." We spent the next 3 days planning every detail. The plan: Madison would give birth naturally with Justin present, maintaining the illusion. Immediately after we'd move Madison and the baby to a safe location, Tom's colleague had a lake house 3 hours away, completely off the grid. Madison would recover there with a private nurse. 1 week after birth, we'd announce Madison had died of postpartum complications. Justin would believe his plan had worked. He'd arrange the funeral, probably already spending the insurance money mentally. We'd hold the funeral at St. Andrew's Church downtown. We'd invite everyone: Justin's friends, Madison's colleagues, community members. Make it big and public. Then mid-service we'd play the video. Every piece of evidence clearly presented. The pills, the recordings of Justin and Alexis, the gambling debts, the insurance policy, everything. And while everyone watched Justin's world collapse on screen, Madison would walk in, alive, healthy, carrying Lily. "The shock will prevent Justin from running," Tom explained, spreading a diagram of St. Andrews on my desk. "He'll be paralyzed. That's when police move in." Detective Sarah Martinez. I'd made contact through Tom's connections, a detective specializing in domestic violence. She'd reviewed our evidence and agreed to coordinate. Understanding public exposure would strengthen the case. "Martinez and her team will be positioned at all exits." Tom pointed to the diagram. "The moment the video finishes and Madison appears, they arrest Justin for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and a dozen other charges. With video evidence and 200 witnesses, he can't claim innocence." "What about Alexis Sterling?" "Martinez arrests her as an accomplice. The recordings make her complicity clear. We reviewed every detail. Timing exactly when the video would play, how long when Madison would enter. Location, which door she'd use, where I'd sit. Witnesses ensuring Madison's law firm colleagues attended." "What if Justin doesn't come?" Tom smiled grimly. "He'll come. Men like Justin can't resist the performance. He'll play the grieving widower. Probably cry fake tears. And Lily, Madison leaves her with the nurse at the safe house during the funeral. Only separated a few hours. We can't risk bringing an infant." On the third day, reviewing the timeline one more time, Tom sat back. "Charles, you know this destroys your relationship with Justin permanently. Even if he doesn't go to prison, though he'll never forgive you. You're losing your son." "I lost my son long ago," I said. "The boy I raised died somewhere along the way. I'm not saving Justin. I'm saving Madison and Lily." Tom nodded slowly. "In 30 years of law, I've never seen anything like this. It's brilliant and terrifying and probably insane." He paused. Charles, if this works, Justin will realize he chose the wrong person to cross. What do you mean? He forgot the most important thing about his father. Tom closed his laptop. That you didn't build a banking empire by being nice. You built it by being smarter and more ruthless than anyone else in the room. He's about to learn that lesson the hard way. I thought about that as Tom packed up. Justin had always seen me as weak as the old man he could manipulate. He'd forgotten, or never understood, that I'd spent 4 decades outmaneuvering people far more dangerous than him. He'd made a fatal mistake. He'd underestimated his father, and he was about to pay for it. The final days before everything changed passed like a dream, or maybe a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I lost count of how many times I wanted to stop it all, to just go to the police. But I'd committed to this path, and Madison was counting on me. The morning after our meeting with Tom, I found Madison in the kitchen. Justin had already left for another supposed job interview. She was staring at the 2 pills in her palm, one large prenatal vitamin, one small white death sentence. I can't keep taking poison, she whispered. Oh, then don't, I said firmly. Take the prenatal vitamin, but the white pill pretend to swallow it, then spit it out when he's not looking. She nodded, and I watched as she palmed the small white pill, brought her hand to her mouth with the other pill and water, then slipped the digoxin into her pocket. It became our morning routine. Justin would give her the pills. She'd fake taking them. Later, she'd flush the digoxin down the toilet. And slowly, day by day, she started to come back to life. The change was remarkable. Within 3 days, color returned to her face. Within a week, she could climb stairs without stopping. She started eating full meals, actually tasting the food. Her hands stopped shaking. Her eyes grew brighter. I feel like myself again, she told me one afternoon. Charles, if you hadn't figured it out. But I did, I said. And now we're going to finish this. Justin noticed nothing. He was too busy preparing for what he thought was Madison's imminent death. I caught him on the phone one evening. Yeah, any day now. After the baby comes, it'll be quick. I'll have your money within a month, I swear. I found papers on his desk custody documents requesting sole custody of Lily dated 2 weeks in the future. He was that confident in his timeline. On August 28th, Madison went into labor. It was 3 a.m. when she knocked on my bedroom door, breathing hard. Charles, it's time. I got Justin up, and we rushed her to Mercy Hospital downtown. The labor lasted 14 hours. Tom met me in the waiting room, and together we coordinated the next steps. At 5:47 p.m., Lily Eleanor Patterson was born, 6 pounds 4 ounces, perfect. When the nurse let me into the room, I saw Madison holding her daughter for the first time, tears streaming down her face. Justin stood in the corner looking at his daughter with an expression I couldn't read. Not love, maybe calculation, maybe already thinking about explaining away a motherless child to his new life in Costa Rica. She's beautiful, I said, touching Lily's tiny hand. She is, Madison whispered, then looked at me with frightened eyes. Are we really doing this? I nodded. Tom's waiting outside. When you're ready. That night, while Justin went home to rest, Tom and I moved Madison and baby Lily to the lake house. A private nurse named Patricia Morrison was already there, ready to care for them both. Madison cried as we drove away, holding Lily close. This is the hardest thing I've ever done, she said. I know, but in 4 days it'll all be over, and you and Lily will be safe. We left her at the lake house, beautiful, isolated, surrounded by pine trees and water. Patricia would stay with them, ensure both mother and baby were healthy. Madison would wait. I returned to the city alone, my heart heavy, but my resolve firm. The next morning, I called Justin to the hospital. The doctor, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, who Tom had briefed, delivered the terrible news. I'm so sorry, Mr. Patterson. Your wife developed a pulmonary embolism overnight. We did everything we could, but she didn't make it. Justin's reaction was perfect. His face crumpled. He made a sound like a wounded animal. He even produced tears. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed he was devastated. "What about the baby?" he asked, voice breaking. "What about Lily? She's fine, healthy. You can see her whenever you're ready." I need a moment," Justin said, walking away down the corridor, pulling out his phone. I followed at a distance. It worked. "Yeah, she's gone. I'll have the money in 2 weeks. No, the funeral first, have to make it look good." I returned to where Dr. Mitchell waited. "He bought it completely," she said quietly. "Mr. Patterson, I've worked here 15 years. I've seen women die from postpartum complications, but I've never seen anything like this. Thank you for helping us. That man is a monster. I'm glad we're stopping him." Over the next 3 days, I planned the funeral, called St. Andrew's Church and reserved it for September 2nd. Called Madison's colleagues at the law firm. Called old friends and neighbors. Invited everyone I could think of. Justin helped playing the grieving widower perfectly. He chose white roses. He picked out a mahogany casket. He wrote a eulogy that made me sick with its false sentiment. I loved her so much," he told me, tears in his eyes. "I don't know how I'll go on without her." I wanted to hit him. Instead, I patted his shoulder. "You'll get through this. We all will." The night before the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my study, looking at the video file on my laptop, the one that would play tomorrow, exposing everything. Tom had done brilliant work editing it together. Every piece of evidence clearly presented. Undeniable. I went upstairs and stood in the doorway of Madison's empty room. Tomorrow she'd be back here. With Lily. Safe. Free. And Justin would be in jail where he belonged. But first we had to get through tomorrow. I found Madison's phone, the one we'd left behind to maintain the illusion, and looked at her last text to me. "Thank you for believing in me, Grandpa. I trust you with my life. Tomorrow would change my life forever. Tomorrow I would lose my son, truly lose him in every way that mattered. Tomorrow the whole city would know what kind of man Justin Patterson really was. But tomorrow Madison and Lily would be safe. And that was all that mattered." The morning of the funeral, I woke before dawn. I hadn't slept, just lay in bed, watching darkness give way to gray light. At 5:30, I gave up and got out of bed. I showered, shaved, and dressed in the black suit I'd worn to Eleanor's funeral. Standing in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, I looked at the man staring back. 66 years old. Gray hair. Deep lines around tired eyes. "Today, you protect the people you love," I said quietly to my reflection. I arrived at St. Andrew's Church at 8:30. The Gothic cathedral, built in the 1890s, could hold 400 people. Today, we'd have about 200. Tom was already there, coordinating with church staff. He walked over when he saw me. "Everything's in place," he said quietly. "The video is ready. Detective Martinez and her team are positioned outside. Madison is 20 minutes away with Patricia. By 9:30, guests started arriving. Madison's colleagues from the law firm came in groups, looking genuinely sad. Several were already crying. Neighbors arrived. Old friends. Community members. They filed into pews, speaking in hushed tones. I sat in the third row right side where I could see everything. The mahogany casket was positioned at the front, polished to a mirror shine with brass handles. On a small table beside it sat a large framed photograph of Madison smiling, wearing a blue dress. She looked happy, alive, beautiful. White roses surrounded the casket, dozens of them. The organ began playing softly. People settled into their seats. I checked my watch. 9:55. Then the main doors opened. Justin walked in, and the entire church seemed to hold its breath. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, his face, pale eyes, slightly red, as if he'd been crying. He walked slowly, deliberately, as if every step was painful. And beside him, her arm linked through his, was Alexis Sterling. She wore a black Chanel dress, black heels clicking on stone floors, oversized sunglasses hiding half her face. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon. As they walked down the center aisle toward the front pews, Justin reached out and took Alexis's hand. Their fingers intertwined. She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. Neither of them looked sad. Justin looked relieved. Alexis looked almost bored. The whispers started immediately. Is that his wife's funeral? Who's the woman? Are they holding hands? That's completely inappropriate. People pulled out phones, taking photos, recording video. One of Madison's colleagues, a woman named Jennifer Rodriguez, stood up and said loudly, "Are you kidding me right now?" Justin looked in her direction with what he probably thought was wounded expression, but came across as annoyance. He and Alexis took their seats in the front row directly across from me. I could see them clearly. Justin still held Alexis's hand. She leaned close to whisper something, and he smiled, actually smiled, before catching himself and rearranging his face. My hands clenched into fists. I'd known my son was capable of terrible things. I'd seen the evidence. But seeing him here at his wife's funeral, holding his mistress's hand, barely bothering to fake grief, it took every ounce of self-control not to stand up and expose him right then. But we had a plan, and the plan required patience. Father David walked to the front and raised his hands for silence. The organ music faded. People settled back, the whispers continued. We are gathered here today to mourn the loss of Madison Wells Patterson, a young woman taken from us too soon. I barely heard the words. I was watching Justin, watching how he stared straight ahead, jaw tight, hand still holding Alexis's. Watching how he didn't cry, didn't even seem upset. Just waiting for this performance to be over so he could move on with his life. I looked at my son sitting in the front row of his wife's funeral, holding his mistress's hand, and I knew, absolutely knew, that I'd made the right choice. This man was not my son anymore. My son had died long ago, if he'd ever existed at all. This was a stranger, a monster, and I felt no regret for what I was about to do to him. Not anymore. Looking at him now, seeing him not just unremorseful, but practically triumphant, I knew I was doing the right thing. Madison deserved justice. Lily deserved to grow up safe. And this man deserved to face the consequences of what he'd done. The service continued, but I wasn't listening. I was counting down the minutes until everything changed, before I reveal what unfolded inside St. Andrew's Church. Let me ask you this. Could you sacrifice your relationship with your own flesh and blood to rescue someone else's future? Share I would if you stand with my decision. Or I couldn't if you believe family loyalty comes first. Your perspective helps me know this story matters. Fair warning, parts of this account have been adapted to maximize impact and learning. If that's not for you, no judgment, you can stop here. Father David's voice had been droning on for nearly 20 minutes, speaking about God's mysterious plans, about peace in heaven, about how Madison was in a better place now. And so we commend Madison's soul to the Lord. Father David said, his hands raised. May she find eternal rest, and may her daughter Lily grow up knowing her mother's love. Let us pray. Excuse me, Father. The voice cut through the church. Thomas Webb stood up from his seat in the fourth row, his silver hair catching the stained glass light. Father David paused, looking confused. I'm sorry, but the service isn't... Can I apologize for the interruption, Father? Tom said, his voice carrying with authority. But before we conclude, there's something that must be shown. Something Charles Patterson has asked me to present. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Justin's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. Alexis leaned over to whisper something, but Justin shook his head sharply. Tom walked to the front, pulling a small remote from his pocket. What you're about to see is a video statement from Charles Patterson Madison's father-in-law. I ask that you watch it in its entirety. This is highly irregular, Father David began. I understand, Father, but this is necessary. He pressed a button. A massive screen descended from the ceiling. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life, and there I was. I'd recorded the video 3 days ago in my study. I sat in my leather chair wearing this same black suit. My face was serious, my voice clear. My name is Charles Patterson, my recorded voice said. I am the father of Justin Patterson and the grandfather of Lily Patterson. I am here today to tell you the truth about what happened to my daughter-in-law, Madison Wells Patterson. Whispers grew louder. Justin stood up suddenly, but Tom moved quickly, positioning himself near the aisle. Justin sat back down, his face white. On screen, I continued. Madison did not die of natural causes. Madison did not die of postpartum complications. My son, Justin Patterson, attempted to murder her. The church erupted. People gasped. Someone screamed. Several women started crying. Jennifer Rodriguez stood and shouted, I knew it. I knew something was wrong. Please, Tom called out. Please watch the video. The crowd quieted barely. Everyone's eyes fixed on the screen. Justin sat frozen, Alexis beside him, equally paralyzed. On screen, I laid it out methodically, like presenting to the bank's board. Clear, factual, undeniable. Justin married Madison Wells in February. Shortly after, he began poisoning her with digoxin, a cardiac medication that in improper doses causes heart failure and death. The screen changed, showing a photograph of the small white pill. Beside it, digoxin, cardiac glycoside, lethal in high doses. More gasps. Someone said, "Oh my God." My son did this because he owed $1,800,000 to an illegal gambling operation. He needed money desperately. He decided the easiest way to get it was to kill his pregnant wife and collect the insurance payout. The screen showed a document, a life insurance policy. The camera zoomed in. Insured. Madison Wells, Patterson beneficiary, Justin Patterson. Death benefit, $2,800,000. Effective date, April 15th, 2023. 2 months after their marriage, the church exploded. People stood pointing, shouting. Madison's colleagues were on their feet, faces contorted with rage. $2.8 million, my voice said. That was what my son decided his wife's life was worth. The screen split, showing the insurance policy and bank documents. Debts, threats, outstanding debt, $1,847,392.28. Creditor Tony Bianchi. Private loans, status, overdue, final notice. Justin owed this money to dangerous people, I explained. People threatening him. So he made a plan, a calculated, cold-blooded plan to murder the woman who loved him, the mother of his child, to collect insurance money and pay his debts. Justin tried to stand again, his face red with fury or panic. Several people grabbed his arms, forcing him down. He was saying something, mouth-moving, but I couldn't hear over the crowd noise. Alexis was crying, hands covering her face, styled hair coming loose. On screen, my face filled the frame, grave and angry. My son planned this murder with help from his mistress, a woman named Alexis Sterling. Every head turned to Alexis. She shrank in her seat, trying to hide, but there was nowhere to go. Ms. Sterling knew about the plan. She encouraged it. She was promised a portion of the insurance money for her cooperation. Tom stood at the front, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold. This was exactly what we'd planned. Shock, outrage, public exposure, making it impossible for Justin to manipulate the narrative. I have compiled evidence, my voice said. Evidence proving every word I'm saying. evidence that will be presented in full. But first I want you to understand one thing. The screen went dark briefly. Then my face appeared closer, eyes intense. I'm not showing you this to shame my son publicly, though he deserves that shame. I'm showing you this because I want no doubt, no room for his lies, no possibility he will manipulate his way out of what he's done. I paused. The entire church held its breath. And I'm showing you this because of what comes next. Because you all need to see the truth before you see the miracle. The screen froze on my face. Then large white letters across the bottom. But Madison didn't die. Madison is alive. And Madison is here today. The video didn't stop. The screen remained bright, my face still visible, and I could see people in the church leaning forward, waiting, wondering how it was possible that Madison was alive. But I wasn't done yet. On screen, my expression grew harder. I know what I'm saying sounds impossible. But before I show you proof that Madison is alive, you need to hear exactly what my son planned. You need to hear it in his own words. I leaned forward in the video, my hands clasped. On August 10th, I placed a recording device in the office of my home. That evening, Justin and Alexis Sterling had a conversation. This is what they said. The screen faded to black. Then the audio began. The church fell completely silent. Justin's voice came through the speakers, crystal clear. Once Madison's gone, we take the insurance money and disappear. Costa Rica like we planned. Beautiful beaches, no extradition treaty. We'll be set for life. Then Alexis's voice, smooth and calculated. And you're sure no one will suspect? Postpartum complications. Justin replied casually, like discussing dinner plans. It happens all the time. Her body's already weak from the medication. After the baby comes, I'll increase the dose. She'll get worse, develop what looks like heart failure, and then it'll be over. Natural causes. The doctor will sign the certificate without question. What about the baby? Alexis asked. Adoption, probably. I can't raise a kid on my own. Maybe Charles will take her. Either way, she's not my problem. The coldness in his voice, talking about his own daughter, like she was an inconvenience, talking about his wife's fate like it was a business transaction. It made the entire church gasp. I watched as people turned to look at Justin. His face had gone from white to gray. Alexis was shaking her head, mouthing, "No, no, no." The audio continued. Alexis. And the money will be enough. Your debts to Tony and our new life. Justin, 2.8 million. Tony gets his 1.8 that leaves us a clean million. We can live like royalty in Costa Rica on that. New identities, new life, no one from here will ever find us. Alexis laughed. God, I can't believe this is really happening. I can't believe you're really going to pull this off. Justin. I've planned everything perfectly. The substance is untraceable in normal postpartum blood work. I've researched which hospitals have the highest complications rates. I've found a doctor who's overworked and won't ask questions. It's foolproof. The recording ended. The screen went black, then my face appeared. That was recorded on August 10th, I said calmly. 8 days before Madison gave birth to Lily. The church erupted. Madison's colleagues were sobbing. Jennifer Rodriguez was screaming, "You monster!" Others were on their feet, shouting, pointing at Justin and Alexis. Justin stood up suddenly, his face twisted with panic. That was taken out of context, but no one was listening. On screen, I continued. But that wasn't the only conversation I recorded. On August 18th, 8 days ago, I recorded a phone conversation between my son and one of Tony Bianchi's associates. Listen, the screen faded to black. Another recording began. This time, Justin was talking to someone else, a man's voice, rough and threatening. Man's voice. Tony's getting impatient, Justin. You said you'd have the money by end of summer. Justin. I know. Just a few more weeks. My wife is due any day now. Once the baby's born and she's not here anymore, I'll have the insurance payout. 2 weeks max to process the claim. Then Tony gets every penny he's owed. Man's voice. He better. You know what happens if you don't pay. We know where you live, Justin. We know where your father lives. Justin, I'll pay, I swear. Just give me until mid-September. I'll have it all. The recording ended. My face appeared on screen once more. That conversation proves Justin was planning Madison's fate with a specific timeline. He told his creditors exactly when they could expect payment. The church was pandemonium now. People crying, shouting. Several men from Madison's law firm were trying to push toward Justin. Tom had to step in front of them, arms raised. "Please," Tom shouted, "let the video finish." But Justin wasn't waiting. He grabbed Alexis's hand and bolted toward the side door. They made it 3 steps before Detective Sarah Martinez appeared in the doorway, blocking their path. She was in her late 40s, dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a black suit with a badge on her hip. Behind her stood 4 uniformed officers. Justin Patterson. Detective Martinez said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Alexis Sterling, don't move." Justin froze. Alexis tried to pull away, but 2 officers moved to flank them. "This is insane," Justin said, voice shaking. "This is all fake. That recording is fake. My father doctored it." Justin Patterson. Detective Martinez continued ignoring his protests. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit harm, attempted harm in the first-degree insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud." She nodded to the officers who moved forward with handcuffs. "Alexis Sterling, you are under arrest as an accomplice." "No," Alexis screamed. "I didn't know he told me she was already sick. This isn't my fault." "You have the right to remain silent," one officer said as he cuffed Justin's hands behind his back. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "I want a lawyer," Justin shouted, voice cracking. "I'm not saying anything. I want a lawyer right now." The officers began leading them toward the door. Justin was struggling, but the officer's grip was firm. Alexis was crying hysterically, her makeup running down her face in black streaks. As they passed my pew, Justin's eyes met mine for just a second. In that moment, I saw everything: rage, betrayal, disbelief, and underneath it all, fear. Then they were gone, led out of the church, and into the waiting police cars outside. The video was still playing. My face appeared on the screen one more time. "Everything you just heard has been recorded," I said, my voice steady. "Everything has been documented, verified, and preserved. These recordings are authentic, verified by independent forensic audio experts. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable." I paused, looking directly into the camera. My son tried to harm his wife for money, and now everyone knows the truth. The screen went dark. The screen had gone dark, and for a moment the church was quiet, except for crying and shocked whispers. People thought it was over. They were wrong. The screen flickered back to life. My face appeared again, but this time my expression was different, harder, colder, more clinical. "Justin and Alexis have been arrested," I said from the screen. "But before we move forward, I want you to see the evidence in detail. I want you to understand exactly what my son did to Madison." The screen changed, showing a close-up photograph of the small white pill I'd taken from Justin's nightstand. The image was so large and clear that every detail was visible. "This is digoxin," I said, my voice steady. "In medical settings, it's used to treat heart conditions, but in the wrong hands at the wrong dose, it becomes a weapon." The screen split, showing the pill on one side and a laboratory report on the other. The report was from Brian Carter's lab, dated August 23rd. This pill was analyzed by a certified pharmacologist. The concentration of digoxin in this single tablet is 500 micrograms, 5 times the normal therapeutic dose. If someone without a heart condition were to take this daily, the cumulative effect would be devastating. The screen showed a medical chart highlighting specific effects: cardiac arrhythmia, severe nausea, dizziness, weakness, eventual heart failure. Madison was taking one of these pills every morning for 3 months, I said. Justin told her they were prenatal vitamins. She trusted him completely. A gasp rippled through the church. Several of Madison's colleagues were holding each other, crying harder now. The screen changed, showing bank transaction records. One transaction was highlighted in red. On May 15th of this year, Justin made a wire transfer of $3,000 to an overseas pharmaceutical supplier that operates illegally. The screen zoomed in. Recipient MedSource Direct Limited. Amount $3,000. Purpose pharmaceutical order. Date May 15th, 2023. Would Justin purchased a 6-month supply of digoxin from this illegal source? I explained. Enough to slowly poison Madison without raising immediate suspicion. The church was silent now, everyone staring at the screen in horror. The screen changed again, showing handwritten notes. Justin's handwriting, I'd seen it on birthday cards for 38 years. The notes were in a small notebook photographed page by page. The timeline: pregnancy complications to birth to postpartum issues to 2 to 3 weeks. Increased dose after delivery. Doctor won't suspect. Common complications. Another page showed internet search terms, handwritten. Undetectable cardiac medications. How long does digoxin stay in bloodstream? Postpartum heart failure statistics. Life insurance claim processing time. The church erupted. People were sobbing openly. Jennifer Rodriguez had her hands over her mouth, tears streaming. These notes were found in Justin's desk drawer, I said from the screen. He documented his entire plan. Every step, every calculation. The screen changed, showing photographs. Surveillance-style images, time-stamped and dated. Justin and Alexis entering a hotel together. July 12th, July 19th, August 2nd, August 9th. In each photo, they were holding hands, laughing. In one image, Alexis was showing Justin something on her phone: real estate listings in Costa Rica. Justin wasn't just planning to harm his wife. I said, my voice hard. He was planning his future without her. A future with Alexis Sterling. A future funded by Madison's life insurance. The screen showed more photos, receipts from expensive dinners, airline searches for Costa Rica rental property inquiries. All dated during Madison's pregnancy. While Madison was carrying his child, I continued. While she was getting sicker every day from the poison he was giving her, Justin was planning beach vacations with his mistress. More sobs echoed through the church. The screen went dark. Then my face appeared one final time. But now there was something different in my expression. Not just anger, but something protective. I've shown you all this evidence not to humiliate my son, though he deserves that humiliation. I've shown you this because I need you to understand the depth of what he planned. The calculation, the cruelty, the complete lack of conscience. I paused, leaning forward, my eyes intense. I gathered this evidence, every recording, every document, every photograph, because I had to save Madison and Lily. I had to stop my son from completing his plan, and I had to make sure that when the truth came out, there would be no doubt whatsoever. Another pause. The church was completely silent, everyone waiting. Hi. But there's one more thing you need to know, I said, and for the first time in the entire video, I smiled slightly. One more piece of this story that will change everything you think you know. I looked directly into the camera. I didn't gather this evidence to punish my son. I gathered it to protect Madison and Lily. I made sure my son's plan would fail. I made sure Madison would survive. My smile grew wider, more confident. And now I'm going to show you exactly how I saved them. The screen went dark once more, but this time, something was different. The lights in the church began to brighten slightly. People looked around, confused. Tom was standing at the front, looking toward the back entrance of the church. And then I heard a sound that made my heart leap. The back doors of St. Andrew's Church slowly began to open. I'd been waiting for this moment for days. I glanced at Tom near the altar. He gave me a small nod. Right on schedule. Patricia had texted Madison was in position at the back entrance with Lily. Everything was going according to plan. Then the back doors of St. Andrew's Church opened fully. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the doorway, creating a bright silhouette. People leaned forward, squinting, trying to see who was there. Some whispered, confused. Others sat frozen. But I understood. This was the moment we'd planned for. The figure stepped forward out of the blinding light and into the church where everyone could see her clearly. And the entire cathedral erupted. It was Madison. She was alive. She was healthy. She was beautiful exactly as I'd seen her 2 days ago when Tom and I had visited the lake house. She wore the simple white dress we'd chosen together, not black, but white like hope, like new beginnings. Her dark hair fell past her shoulders. Her face, once so pale, now had color. Her eyes were bright and clear, and in her arms, wrapped in a soft pink blanket, was Lily. "Oh my God," someone screamed. "She's alive." The church exploded. People jumped to their feet. Madison's colleagues were crying tears of happiness now, not grief. Jennifer Rodriguez was sobbing, her friends holding her up. "Madison, you're alive." Others began clapping tentatively at first, then louder, stronger. The sound of applause filled the cathedral, bouncing off stone walls and vaulted ceilings. I felt my chest tighten. The plan had worked. She was here. She was safe. Madison walked slowly down the center aisle. She held Lily close, one hand supporting the baby's head, the other wrapped protectively around her small body. People reached out to touch her as she passed, confirming she was real. She smiled, tears streaming, but didn't stop walking. She was looking at me. I stood up from my pew. I'd prepared myself for this moment, but no preparation could have readied me for the wave of relief and love that crashed over me. Madison reached my row and stopped. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then she said, voice choked with emotion, "Grandpa." That word broke something inside me. She stepped closer and wrapped her free arm around me, Lily still cradled safely. I held them both and felt tears streaming down my face. This was what I'd fought for. "Thank you," Madison whispered against my shoulder. "Thank you for believing me. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for giving Lily a chance to know her mother." I pulled back slightly to look at her face. "You don't have to thank me. You're family. I would do anything to protect you." "I love you, Grandpa," she said, tears spilling. "You saved my life. You saved Lily's life. I will never forget that. You're safe now," I told her. "Both of you. You're safe and you're home, and I will always protect you. That's a promise." She pulled me into another hug, her body shaking with relief, sobs. The applause grew louder. People were standing, filling the church with joy and amazement. Some crying, some laughing, some both. Tom appeared beside us, smiling. "Well done, Charles. You magnificent bastard, you actually pulled it off." I laughed through my tears. "We pulled it off. I couldn't have done this without you." Father David stood at the altar looking bewildered. We decided not to tell him. He was staring at Madison like he was seeing a resurrection. Madison's colleagues surrounded us, pulling her into hugs. They all wanted to see Lily, to hold the baby they'd thought would grow up motherless. "What, is she really okay?" Jennifer kept asking, touching Madison's face. "You're really okay? You're not sick anymore?" I'm fine, Madison said, laughing through tears. I stopped taking the pills 3 weeks ago. Once the poison was out of my system, I started recovering. Charles figured it out just in time. Justin was actually poisoning you, Jennifer said, voice shaking with fury. I know, Madison said quietly, hand tightening around Lily. But he didn't win. We did. I watched the scene unfold. Madison surrounded by people who loved her. Lily being passed carefully, so everyone could see she was healthy and perfect. The church that had been filled with mourning, now filled with celebration. The transformation was complete. What had been a funeral an hour ago, dark, somber, filled with grief and horror, was now a celebration of life. A celebration of survival. A celebration of justice. I had won. Madison was alive and healthy. Lily was safe. Justin was in custody and would face justice. Alexis was arrested as his accomplice. The truth was exposed, documented, and undeniable. But as I stood watching Madison smile and laugh, I felt something complex settling in my chest. Something bittersweet I hadn't fully anticipated. My son was gone. Not deceased, but gone in every way that mattered. I'd watched him being led away in handcuffs. I'd seen the hatred in his eyes. Whatever relationship we'd had, whatever hope I'd held that he might change, that was destroyed now. Irreparable. Eleanor would have been heartbroken. She'd always believed Justin could be saved, that underneath all the lies there was still the little boy who'd climbed into her lap for bedtime stories. But I'd learned the truth. That little boy was gone. Maybe he'd never really existed. Maybe I'd just wanted to believe in him so badly that I'd invented a version of my son that had never been real. Madison caught my eye across the crowd and smiled, full of love and gratitude and hope. Then she mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." I nodded, managing a smile back, even as I felt the weight of what I'd sacrificed. I had won. Madison and Lily were safe. Justice would be served. But the victory didn't feel quite the way I'd imagined it would. The celebration continued around me, people laughing, crying, hugging, Madison cooing over baby Lily. But I found myself drifting toward the side of the church, toward one of the tall, stained glass windows that looked out onto the street. Outside, parked along the curb, were 3 police cars. Their lights were still flashing red and blue against the late afternoon sky. The sight was surreal, almost beautiful in a strange way. And there in the back of the second car I could see him. Justin. He was sitting with his hands cuffed behind his back, his head down, staring at his lap. Even from this distance, even through the tinted window, I could see the slump of his shoulders, the defeat in his posture. In the third car sat Alexis. Her platinum blonde hair was a mess, now her expensive dress wrinkled. She was crying. I could see her shoulders shaking. Unlike Justin, who seemed to have folded into himself, Alexis was fighting. She was leaning forward, her mouth moving rapidly, probably still trying to talk her way out. But there was no talking out of this. Not anymore. Tom appeared beside me, following my gaze. He didn't say anything at first. "They'll be processed tonight," he said finally, his voice quiet. "Held without bail, most likely. The evidence is overwhelming. Detective Martinez said they're looking at 25 to life for Justin, 15 to 20 for Alexis as an accomplice." I nodded but didn't speak. "You did the right thing, Charles," Tom continued. "You saved Madison's life. You saved Lily's future. Justin made his choices. This is on him, not you." "I know," I said, and I did know. But understanding something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were 2 different things. Behind us, I could hear Madison laughing. The sound was light, free, unburdened. That laugh alone was worth everything I'd done. But it didn't erase the fact that the man sitting in that police car was my son. Eleanor would have hated this, I said quietly. She always believed he could be saved. Even when he was at his worst, she always said there was still good in him somewhere. Maybe Eleanor was wrong, Tom said gently. Maybe there was never anything to save. Or maybe some people choose to be beyond saving. I thought about all the chances I'd given Justin over the years, the money I'd lent that he never paid back, the jobs I'd helped him get that he'd quit or been fired from, the lies I'd forgiven. And I thought about how even after all of that, he'd chosen to plan his wife's demise. Not in a moment of passion, but carefully, methodically, over months. He called me last week, I said suddenly. After he was arrested, they let him make his one phone call and he called me. Tom looked at me surprised. You didn't mention that. I didn't answer. I saw his name and I just couldn't. I let it go to voicemail. Did he leave a message? Yes. I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed play. I'd listened to it only once. Justin's voice came through the speaker, tight with fury. Dad, it's me. I know you probably won't answer, but I need you to hear this. What you did exposing me like that, humiliating me, that was cruel. That was vindictive. I'm your son. You were supposed to protect me, not destroy me. Madison wasn't even that sick. The digoxin wasn't going to... He cut himself off, realizing what he was admitting. Then his voice became pleading. Dad, please. You have to help me. Tell them this was all a misunderstanding. Tell them Madison was already sick, that I was just trying to help her. Tell them... The message cut off. He'd run out of time. Tom was staring at me. He still doesn't get it. Even now, he still doesn't understand what he did wrong. No, I said quietly, ending the recording. He doesn't, and I don't think he ever will. I looked back out the window. The officer was now opening Justin's car door, helping him out. They were getting ready to transport him to the station. Justin stood on the sidewalk, his hands still cuffed. For a moment he looked up, not at the church exactly, but in this general direction. I couldn't see his eyes from this distance, couldn't read his expression. But I imagined I could feel the weight of his hatred, his conviction that I was the villain in this story. Maybe in his mind I was. Do you regret it? Tom asked. Any of it? I thought about that question as I watched Justin being guided into the transport vehicle. Did I regret exposing my son? Did I regret destroying what remained of our relationship? No, I said finally. I regret that it came to this. I regret that Justin became the kind of man who could plan something so evil. I regret that Eleanor didn't live to see her grandchildren grow up safe. I regret a lot of things. I paused, watching the transport vehicle pull away from the curb. But I don't regret saving Madison and Lily. I would do it again, 1,000 times. The vehicle turned the corner and disappeared. Just like that, Justin was gone. Not deceased, but gone from my life in every way that mattered. I would probably never see him again, except maybe in a courtroom, separated by barriers and guards. Behind me, someone called my name. I turned to see Madison standing there, holding Lily, her face glowing with joy. She was surrounded by friends, by people who loved her, by a life she was going to get to live now. That was what I'd fought for. That smile, that future. But as I walked back toward her, leaving the window and the flashing lights behind, I couldn't shake the feeling that settled deep in my bones. I had won. Madison and Lily were safe. Justice would be served. But I looked at that police car driving away with my son inside, and I realized something I hadn't fully understood until this moment. This wasn't the victory I'd wanted. It wasn't the ending I'd hoped for when Justin first called me 2 months ago to say he was getting married, having a baby, wanting to come home. This was a loss. A necessary loss, maybe. The right loss, definitely. But a loss nonetheless. And no amount of justice or celebration could change that fact. A week after everything that happened at St. Andrew's Church, I found myself sitting in the living room on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The house felt different now, not empty like it had been for the past 10 years since Eleanor died, but full of life purpose, and the gentle sounds that came with having a newborn under the same roof. Madison sat across from me in Eleanor's old chair by the bay window, the one with the best cushions and the softest light. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked healthier than she had in months. Color had returned to her face, the shadows beneath her eyes were fading, and she'd gained back some of the weight she'd lost during the months when Justin was poisoning her. Between us, in a small bassinet in the center of the room, Lily slept peacefully. She was 3 weeks old, tiny and perfect, wrapped in a soft yellow blanket Eleanor had made years ago. I'd found it in the attic and washed it carefully, wanting some part of Eleanor to be present in this new chapter of our lives. I watched Lily's chest rise and fall and felt something settle in my heart. This was what family was meant to feel like. This was what home was supposed to be. "She's beautiful when she sleeps," Madison said quietly, though not quite as peaceful at 3 in the morning. I smiled. "Neither were you when you first came here. I remember hearing you pacing the hallway all night." "That feels like another lifetime," she said. Then her voice shifted. "Charles, I need to talk to you about something." The seriousness made me sit forward. "What is it?" She took a breath, twisting her hands together. "I've been thinking about the future, about what comes next. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a single mother. I don't know how to raise Lily alone." "You're not alone," I said immediately. "But I am," she whispered. "Justin is gone. I have no parents, no siblings, no one except—" She stopped. "Except me," I said. "Madison, look at me." She met my eyes, fear and exhaustion plain on her face. "You are not alone," I said firmly. "You have me. You have this house. You have a home. You're going to raise Lily here with me as a family. But I can't just—" "Yes, you can," I said gently. "Do you remember what I told you in the kitchen when you said you were scared?" She nodded. "I told you that you were my daughter now, that Lily was my granddaughter. I meant it. This house isn't temporary. It's your home. Permanently. Yours and Lily's." Her voice broke. "I don't have anywhere else to go. I can't afford my own place. I can't work full-time with a newborn. I feel so helpless." I stood and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. "You are never going to worry about having somewhere to go. You will never raise Lily without support. But no buts. I've spoken to Tom. We're changing my will. You'll be my primary beneficiary. This house, my savings, everything. And one day, Lily will inherit it too. You and she are my family now." Madison began to cry. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," I said. "After Eleanor died, this house stopped being a home, but you and Lily gave it life again." She hugged me tightly. "Thank you for saving us, for giving us a place to belong, for being the father I never had." I held her, then pulled back. "I'm going to help raise Lily. I'll be here for her first steps, first words, first day of school. I'll teach her to ride a bike and chase away monsters under her bed." She laughed through tears. "You'll spoil her." "Absolutely," I said. "That's a grandfather's job." Lily stirred. Madison lifted her gently, rocking her against her shoulder. I watched them and felt a fierce protectiveness rise inside me. "The road ahead won't be easy," I said. "There will be hard days, sleepless nights, court dates, and healing that takes time." Madison met my gaze, steady now. "But you won't face any of it alone," I continued. "I'll be here. I'll make sure Lily grows up safe, loved, and protected." "I believe you," she said. I reached out and touched Lily's hand. Her fingers curled around mine and my throat tightened. "Welcome home," I whispered. "You're going to have a good life." Madison leaned against me as afternoon light filled the room. We stood there together, a family formed by choice, love, and determination. The future would bring trials and painful questions, but I knew this: I would never abandon them. They were my purpose now, and I would spend whatever time I had left making sure they always knew they were home. 6 months after everything that happened at St. Andrew's Church, I found myself sitting in a courtroom on a cold Tuesday morning in February. The room was exactly what you'd expect: high ceilings, dark wood paneling, rows of uncomfortable benches, and an American flag beside the judge's elevated bench. Madison sat beside me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She'd left Lily at home with Patricia Morrison. Madison had been dreading this day for months, and I could feel the tension radiating from her. Tom sat on her other side, his expression professionally neutral, but his eyes watchful. The bailiff stood. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Eleanor Hayes." We stood as Judge Hayes entered, a woman in her early 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair, wearing traditional black robes. She had a reputation for being tough, but fair. "You may be seated," she said, her voice carrying authority. We sat, and Madison's hand reached for mine. I squeezed it gently. Then the side door opened, and they brought Justin in. I barely recognized him. The confident man who'd walked into St. Andrew's Church was gone. The man being led in by corrections officers was gaunt, pale, drawn. He wore an orange jumpsuit instead of expensive suits. His hands were cuffed, and he shuffled rather than walked. But when his eyes landed on me, I saw something: unchanged, cold hatred. No remorse. No regret. Just anger at being caught. Madison tensed beside me. "It's okay," I whispered. "He can't hurt you anymore." Judge Hayes looked at Justin. "Mr. Patterson, you have been charged with conspiracy to commit harm in the first degree, attempted harm in the first degree, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud." "How do you plead?" Justin's lawyer, a tired-looking public defender, stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." "Very well, let's proceed." The prosecutor, a woman named Rebecca Morrison, who specialized in domestic violence cases, stood and began presenting the case. She was methodical, devastating: the recordings, the laboratory analysis, the bank records, the search history, the handwritten notes. The trial lasted 3 days. Madison had to testify on the second day. I watched her take the stand. Watched her describe how she'd felt herself getting weaker. How she'd trusted her husband with those pills every morning. How she'd begun to suspect, but had been too frightened to act. Her voice shook, but she didn't cry. She looked Justin in the eye and told the truth. I'd never been more proud of her. Justin's lawyer tried to create doubt, tried to suggest the recordings were out of context, that Justin never intended to follow through. But there was too much evidence, too many pieces that fit together perfectly. On the third day, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Judge Hayes scheduled sentencing for the following week. When that day came, she showed no mercy. "Mr. Patterson," she said, looking down at Justin with disgust, "I have been a judge for 20 years. I have seen many criminals, but rarely have I seen someone who planned something so calculated, so cruel, with such complete disregard for human life." She paused. "You attempted to harm your wife, a woman who loved you, who was carrying your child, for money. You poisoned her slowly over months while she was pregnant. You planned to continue until she passed away, and you showed no remorse even when confronted." Justin stood there, his face blank. "For conspiracy to commit harm in the first degree, I sentence you to 25 years in state prison. For insurance fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud, I sentence you to an additional 10 years to be served consecutively. Total sentence 35 years without possibility of parole for the first 20 years. A murmur went through the courtroom. 35 years. Justin would be 73 before he could even be considered for parole. Judge Hayes then turned to Alexis Sterling, whose sentencing was scheduled for the same day. "Ms. Sterling, you were complicit in this plan. You knew what Mr. Patterson was doing. You encouraged it, and you stood to benefit financially. For your role as an accomplice, I sentence you to 15 years in state prison." Alexis broke down crying, but Judge Hayes was unmoved. "These sentences reflect the severity of your crimes and the premeditated nature of your actions." Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. The corrections officers moved forward to take Justin away. As they led him past our row, he stopped for just a moment and looked at me. His eyes were empty cold. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then seemed to think better of it. He just shook his head slightly and allowed himself to be led away. That was the last time I saw my son. Outside the courthouse, Madison collapsed against me, finally letting herself cry. "It's over," she kept saying. "It's really over." "Yes," I said, holding her while Tom stood nearby. "It's over." But as we walked to the car, as we drove home through the February cold, I felt something hollow in my chest. Justice had been served. Justin would spend decades in prison. Alexis would face consequences. The legal system had worked exactly as it should. But justice didn't bring me happiness. It didn't erase the fact that my son was a monster. It didn't give me back the family I'd hoped for when Justin first called me last July. Justice was closure, nothing more. A door closing on a chapter of my life that I'd never wanted to write. 1 year after everything that happened, Madison went back to work. But she wasn't the same lawyer who'd left her job when she'd gotten too sick to continue. She'd changed, not just survived, but transformed. It was a warm August afternoon when I drove her to her new office for the first time. Not the corporate law firm where she'd worked before, but a nonprofit called the Women's Protection Foundation, housed in a modest building downtown. "Are you nervous?" I asked as we pulled into the parking lot. Madison looked at the building, then at Lily strapped in her car seat playing with a stuffed rabbit. "No," she said finally. "I'm ready." And she was. Madison had spent months since the trial rebuilding herself, finding purpose in what she'd survived. She'd reached out to the foundation, told them her story, and asked how she could help. They'd offered her a position immediately. But Madison didn't stop there. 3 months ago, she'd come to me with a proposal. "I want to start a fund to help women escape situations like mine. Women who don't have resources, who don't have family, who don't know where to turn." "What would you call it?" I'd asked. "They're Lily's Hope Fund," she'd said. "Because Lily is my hope. And I want to be hope for other women." We'd worked with Tom to set it up a nonprofit, providing legal assistance, temporary housing, and financial support for women leaving abusive situations. I donated the seed money. Madison had thrown herself into fundraising, speaking at events, writing articles, and people listened. Her story had made national news. But Madison didn't let herself be defined as just a victim. She used her platform to advocate, to educate, to change things. Her new office reflected that mission. Photographs of Lily covered her desk. Lily as a newborn, learning to crawl, taking first steps. Filing cabinets held cases. A bookshelf was lined with legal texts on domestic violence law. A bulletin board displayed thank you notes from women she'd already helped. Over the following weeks, I watched Madison throw herself into the work. She took cases other lawyers wouldn't touch: women with no money, complicated situations, abusers with expensive legal teams. She fought with fierce determination. I accompanied her to court, sometimes watching her present arguments, cross-examine witnesses, stand up to dismissive judges. She was brilliant, sharp, prepared, passionate, and believable. When she told a judge her client's life was in danger, everyone knew she understood exactly what that meant. One afternoon, I attended a conference where Madison was speaking. The room was packed: lawyers, social workers, advocates, survivors. Madison stood at the podium in a navy suit, confident. "My name is Madison Patterson," she began, "and a year ago my husband tried to poison me to collect my life insurance." The room went silent. She told her story simply, factually. But she made everyone understand how she'd been isolated, made to doubt herself, how the system had almost failed her. I survived because I had someone who believed me, she said, her eyes finding mine. My father-in-law saw what was happening and refused to look away. Not every woman has that, so we need to be that person for them. We need to believe them. We need to act. The applause was thunderous. After the conference, people swarmed her lawyers, referring cases, donors, contributing to Lily's Hope Fund survivors, thanking her. I stood back and watched pride swelling in my chest. At home, life had settled into comfortable rhythm. Lily was 19 months old now, on the verge of turning 2. She'd started talking simple words at first, then short phrases, and now constant chatter. Grandpa, she'd call every morning when she woke up, arms outstretched, ready to start the day. I taught her things: how to stack blocks, identify colors, be gentle with the cat that had wandered into our yard and decided to stay. I read her books before bed, took her to the park, showed her how to water the flowers in Eleanor's garden. She was growing up, loved, safe, surrounded by people who would protect her. Everything I'd fought for. One evening, Madison and I were in the living room, her working on a case, brief me reading the newspaper, Lily playing with toys between us. Ordinary, peaceful, perfect. Charles, Madison said, looking up. I never thanked you properly. You've thanked me 100 times. Not for saving my life. I mean for showing me that I could be more than what happened to me. For showing me I could take this terrible thing and turn it into something meaningful. I looked at her, this woman who'd been so sick, so scared, so broken a year ago. Now she was strong, purposeful, making real difference. You did that yourself, I said. I just gave you a safe place to heal. You gave me more than that. You gave me hope. You gave Lily a future. You gave me a reason to fight. Lily toddled over, then climbing into my lap with determination. Grandpa, she said, patting my face. Love you. I love you too, little one. Six no come. I said, my throat tight. Madison watched us, tears in her eyes, good tears. She had transformed her pain into strength. She'd turned her desperation into hope for others. She'd survived something that should have destroyed her and had come out not just intact, but powerful. That was her real legacy. Not what had been done to her, but what she'd chosen to do with it. And watching her work, watching her fight, watching her raise Lily with love and determination, I knew that Eleanor would have been proud. I was certainly proud, more proud than I could ever express. Madison had turned her tragedy into triumph. She'd become a warrior for others, a voice for the voiceless, a lifeline for women who needed someone to believe them. Now, on a warm afternoon in August, 2 years after everything changed, I sit in the garden behind my house, Eleanor's garden, though I've tended it myself for over a decade. The roses are blooming pink and white and deep red, exactly the way she liked them. 30 feet away on the grass under the old oak tree, Madison and Lily are playing. Lily is almost 3 now, a little girl with dark hair like her mother's and a personality that grows bigger every day. She's wearing a yellow sundress, dirt on her knees from digging in the flower bed earlier. Madison sits cross-legged on a blanket, laughing, as Lily runs in circles, arms spread wide like an airplane. The sound of that laugh, free, unburdened, genuine, still catches me sometimes. 2 years ago, I wasn't sure Madison would ever laugh like that again. I watch them and feel something settle deep in my chest. Peace, maybe. Or the quiet satisfaction of knowing I made the right choices even when those choices cost me dearly. I think about Eleanor often these days. She's been gone for 12 years now, but some afternoons, sitting here in her garden, I can almost feel her presence. I wonder what she would think of everything that's happened. Would she be proud of me for protecting Madison and Lily? Or would she be heartbroken that I exposed our son? I like to think she'd understand. Eleanor always had a fierce protective instinct. She would have loved Madison and Lily. She would have fought just as hard as I did. And Justin, I think about him too, though less often than I used to. He's in a maximum security prison 300 miles from here. I haven't visited. He hasn't asked me to. Tom tells me Justin shows no remorse, that prison hasn't changed him. I'm not surprised. Justin made his choices long before he ever met Madison. Maybe those choices started when he was 7 years old, telling his first lies. Maybe earlier with something broken inside him that Eleanor and I never understood. Or maybe some people simply choose to be beyond saving. Not because they can't change, but because they don't want to. I tried to save Justin for 38 years. I gave him chances, money, forgiveness, love. And he took all of it and used it to hurt others. But Madison wanted to be saved. She fought to survive even when she didn't know I was fighting for her. She took the second chance she was given and turned it into something beautiful. That's the difference. That's what I've learned. My grandpa. Lily's voice pulls me from my thoughts. She's running toward me, her little legs pumping, her face flushed and happy. Grandpa, watch. She stops and does a clumsy cartwheel, really just throwing her hands down and kicking her legs up. She lands on her bottom and giggles. "Well, that was excellent," I tell her seriously. "The best cartwheel I've ever seen." "Mommy taught me," Lily announces, then runs back to Madison. Madison catches my eye and smiles. She looks healthy, strong, happy. She's wearing a t-shirt from a charity run she organized for Lily's Hope Fund. Her hair is pulled back in a ponytail. She waves at me and I wave back. This is my family now. Not the family I was born into, not the family I created with Eleanor, but the family I chose. The family I fought for. And sitting here watching them play in the golden afternoon light, I realize something. I have no regrets. I don't regret exposing Justin. I don't regret destroying whatever relationship we had left. I don't regret watching my son being led away in handcuffs. Because every choice I made, every step I took, it was all for this. For Madison's laugh. For Lily's cartwheels. For peaceful afternoons in a garden that's no longer just a memorial to the past, but a celebration of the present. If I could go back knowing everything I know now, I would make the same choices. Every single one. I think about legacy often these days. I'm 68 years old now, and I'm aware that time is finite. Eventually, I'll leave this world, and something will remain behind. For years, I thought legacy meant money, assets, property. Things I could leave behind in a will, things that could be measured and divided. But watching Madison and Lily now, I understand that I was wrong. Legacy isn't what you leave behind in a bank account. Legacy isn't the house or the investments. Legacy is love. It's the people you protect, the lives you change, the hope you give to those who've lost it. Madison's work at the Women's Protection Foundation, that's part of my legacy now. Every woman she helps, every child she saves, carries forward something I started when I chose to believe her. Lily's future, whatever she becomes, that's part of my legacy too. She'll grow up knowing she was loved, knowing she was worth fighting for, knowing that family isn't just about blood, but about choosing each other every day. That's what matters. That's what will remain long after I'm gone. Lily runs over to me again, climbing into my lap without asking permission. She's at that age where she still fits perfectly, where the world is simple and safe. "Tell me a story, Grandpa," she says, settling against my chest. "What kind of story?" "A princess story," she declares. "With a brave princess who saves everyone." I smile and begin. Once upon a time, there was a princess who was very strong and very brave. As I tell the story, making it up as I go, I hold Lily close and watch Madison gathering their picnic blanket, preparing to come inside for dinner. This is my legacy. Not money, not property, not even justice, though justice was necessary. My legacy is love. And that's the only thing that truly matters. The snow fell softly outside the windows on Christmas Eve 2025. I stood alone in my study, the room quiet except for the steady ticking of the grandfather clock Eleanor had loved. 2.5 years had passed since that day at St. Andrew's Church. I was 70 years old now. The man in the mirror had more gray hair and deeper lines around his eyes, but there was peace there too. A calm I hadn't known in years. On my desk lay 2 documents that defined what I would leave behind. The first was my last will and testament prepared with Tom over the past month. The language was simple and final. To Madison Wells, Patterson, my daughter, in every way that matters, I leave my home at 47 Elderwood Avenue, along with all financial assets, investments, and property in my name. I further established the Lily Eleanor Patterson Education Fund with an initial endowment of $500,000 to ensure my granddaughter receives the finest education possible. Tom had reviewed every word. It's airtight, he'd said. Madison and Lily are protected. Protected. That word meant everything to me. The second document was a letter for Lily to read on her 18th birthday. Dear Lily, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. But I want you to know that every day I spent watching you grow was a gift. You were born into circumstances no child should ever face. Your father chose darkness over love, money over family. He tried to take your mother from you before you ever entered this world. But your mother is the strongest person I have ever known. She survived. She fought back. She built a life worth living. When you face hard times, and you will remember where you came from. Remember that you are the daughter of a survivor and the granddaughter of a man who loved you more than his own life. Never let anyone make you feel small. Fight for what matters. Love fiercely. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. All my love, always, Grandpa. I sealed the letter and entrusted it to Tom for safekeeping. Grandpa Lily's voice called from downstairs. Come see the tree. I smiled. That voice could brighten the darkest day. When I entered the living room, I found Madison and Lily beside the Christmas tree. It stood tall and radiant, decorated with lights and ornaments. At the top was a silver star, Eleanor's favorite. Lily wore a red velvet dress, her curls bouncing as she spun in circles. She was 3 years old now, bright and curious with Madison's intelligence and Eleanor's warmth. Do you like it? She asked, grabbing my hand. It's perfect, I said, kneeling beside her. The most beautiful tree I've ever seen. Madison stood by the fireplace watching us. She wore a simple green dress. She looked strong and confident now. The frightened woman who had once arrived at my door was gone. Dinner's almost ready, she said. Lily helped Grandpa set the table. Yes, Lily cheered, pulling me toward the dining room. As we worked together, I felt a deep sense of completeness. None of my professional accomplishments mattered now. Not the offices or the deals or the money. This did. Family, love, protection. Dinner was simple and perfect: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and apple pie. We held hands for grace. Thank you for this food, Madison said softly. Thank you for this family. Thank you for second chances. Amen, I said. Amen, Lily echoed. Afterward, Lily colored on the floor while Madison and I sat by the fire. I signed the papers today, I said. Everything's official. You and Lily will always be taken care of. Madison's eyes filled with tears. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, I replied. You're my daughter, by choice, by love. She rested her head on my shoulder. You saved our lives. You already repaid me, I said. Every day you live with courage. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. What you did to Justin. I thought of my son. No, I said. I regret that I couldn't save him. But I don't regret protecting you and Lily. You chose love, she said. Yes, I answered. I chose love. Later, I read Lily a story until she fell asleep. I tucked her into bed, and Madison kissed her forehead. Merry Christmas, Dad, she whispered. Those words meant everything. Merry Christmas, I replied. Downstairs, Madison showed me a photo album, moments from our life together. The last page showed Madison stepping into the light at St. Andrew's Church. Beneath it, she had written, Love is the only legacy that matters. Outside, snow fell gently. Inside, my family sat in warmth and peace. I would make every choice the same way again, because love is the only thing worth fighting for, and family is the legacy that endures. And to you listening to this story, remember this. After everything I've lived through, this family story forced me to face myself with brutal honesty. I learned that God does not ask us to be comfortable. He asks us to be responsible. God showed me that love without action is just fear in disguise. And God reminded me that protecting the innocent is never optional, even when the cost is your own peace. If you hear my voice and recognize yourself in this family story, please take this as a warning. Don't be like me. Don't wait as long as I did. I ignored patterns because I wanted harmony. I delayed action because I hoped things would fix themselves. That hesitation almost destroyed lives. In every family story, there is a moment when doing nothing becomes the most dangerous choice of all. People often listen to grandpa stories expecting comfort, wisdom, or closure. But grandpa stories like this one are meant to wake you up. These grandpa stories exist to remind you that responsibility doesn't disappear with age, and love sometimes means standing alone when everyone else looks away. If this story made you stop and think, I invite you to leave a comment and share your thoughts. If you believe someone you love needs to hear this family story, please share it with them. And if you want to continue listening to stories that carry hard truths and real-life lessons, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you sincerely for staying with me until the very end. Please note, future stories may include fictionalized elements created for educational and reflective purposes. If this type of content isn't right for you, feel free to exit and choose something that better fits your preferences.